Get started here and welcome everybody. I'm Bill Petrovic. I'll be hosting this workshop, but I'm not the main speaker. We'll get to that in a minute here. The title of the workshop is Secrets of Successful Serial Entrepreneurs. And the conventional wisdom is, and a lot of people come to SCORE with this idea, is if you want to start a business, do a business plan. So, we'll get the request from people, say, I'd like some mentoring. What do you want to talk about? Well, I want to start a business and I know I need a business plan, so help me do a business plan. And this is a little different take on that. So our speaker, Jeff Durham, is going to suggest that maybe the first thing you do is not to do a business plan. And I think you should listen carefully to what he has to say on this, because what he's been working on at Butler University is it right along these lines. Jeff is on the faculty at Butler, and he lectures on entrepreneurship and innovation. Prior to his career there, he owned several businesses of his own, and kind of between selling his businesses and going to Butler, he was doing a lot of mentoring at SCORE, which he still does SCORE mentoring. So Jeff is a SCORE mentor. Today's workshop is going to be 1.5 hours long. We'll be finishing at 1:30. And as you can tell, your microphone and your video cameras are not on. You can see us, but we can't see you. And I wish we could, but we can get up to 70, 80 people in these workshops, and it would be some tiny little fingernail, and you don't have to worry about your appearance this way. So we're going to be using the Q&A functionality of Zoom. Anytime you think of a question as we're going through the webinar, just write it down. I'll be monitoring those. I'll be holding most of the questions till the end, but if there is something that seems to me we ought to ask it right then and there, I'll sort of butt in, and Jeff and I will have that dialogue. One final note, during the corona pandemic, SCORE is continuing to function. We've obviously switched our workshops to Zoom meetings, but we've also continued our mentoring with Zoom meetings as well. Co-mentoring, so that means you and two mentors. It's free, it's by appointment, and if you're interested in SCORE mentoring, you can go to our website, indianapolis.score.org, to register for that. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff, and he'll take control of the screen, put up his slides, and start the conversation. So thanks for coming, and Jeff, it's yours.
All right, thank you, Bill. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the day. A little cool out. Kind of a hint of what fall's going to be like, but I guess it's going to heat up again this afternoon or this weekend. Pleased to be back with you. I usually do this boot camp of sorts, workshop once or twice a year with SCORE, and enjoy doing it. And as Bill said, do mentoring through SCORE as well, and enjoy working with entrepreneurs all across the country. Today, we're going to get the webinar started here. Let me go ahead and load my screen. All right, here we are. So today's webinar, as Bill mentioned, is titled Secrets of Serial Entrepreneurs. A couple questions down at the bottom here I'd like for you to think about. My guess is that most of you are thinking about starting a business. Usually we have some attendees that have their own business. Either way, today's workshop is going to be, I think, some good information for you to think about, particularly those of you that are involved in startups. So first question, Is your business idea worth your limited time, energy, and money? Sometimes we forget that those commodities, if you will, are hard to come by, right? We're all very busy. You may be working a full-time job now and working on your business part-time. And of course, money, it's limited, right? Some of us are using our life savings for our business. That's fine. Others are trying to get loans from friends, family, maybe the SBA. But long story short, that money is precious, and when it's gone, it's gone. And so we want to make sure that we get a good return on our time, energy, and money. Otherwise, we could be doing something else, right? So second question, will your customers buy what you are selling? I've worked with so many people over the years, to be quite honest with you, that are building something that they don't know whether it will be purchased or not from their customer. So these two questions I want to leave with you as we get started today, and we'll talk about these more as we go along. All right, so as Bill mentioned, here's some information about SCORE. You might want to jot this down. Our office is located at Keystone at the Crossing. We have the phone number there. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can either go through the website to set up a mentoring session, or you can give us a call. The website is there at the bottom as well. I believe we're going to send you the slides afterwards too, so that information will be available to you. So what we'll explore today, what do crazy successful serial entrepreneurs know that you don't? Learn how to avoid failure that so many other entrepreneurs experience. Any business can be started, but should yours? Greatly improve your chances of success. Reduce risk and uncertainty by following a proven process. Can you really afford the pitfalls and cost of starting a business that isn't viable? Do you know 100% what your customers really want? Take the guesswork out of where your customers hang out so you can be there to sell to them. Build your product or service so customers can't resist buying it. And know if your business is worth your limited time, energy, and money before you spend any money at all. Some of you have probably heard this before: trust but verify. The way we used to do things, the traditional way of starting a business, is we trusted but we didn't verify. And verify is the key word here. So today's agenda, we're going to go over some startup stats I want to share with you. We're going to talk about some limitations of the traditional startup planning process. And then I'm going to suggest to you an improved business planning process. So here's a couple questions for you. How many of you think you would be a great golfer, skater, or football player if you went to Dick's Sporting Goods today and bought all the necessary accessories? Kind of a funny question, right? Well, what would you purchase a home without having a professional inspection? I'm guessing many of you probably say no to that as well. If you're going to a foreign country, can you become fluent in their language simply by having a cup of coffee with someone that is fluent? How many of you would advise your kids to marry someone they've never dated? I think you would all agree if there's a process that can reduce our chances of failure while improving our chances of success, then we should carefully consider such a process. So how does America's traditional startup strategy measure up? Don't get overwhelmed by all the data here. Bottom line here is this graph by the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that after 5 years of business, startups incur about a 50% failure rate. So about a little over 50% are still in business after a 5-year period. For every business that opens each year, any guesses on how many close? Well, usually in a live environment, I'll see some hands go up, but to keep it simple, there's about a 1-to-1 relationship. So for every startup business that's birthed, one dies out. And that's been really the case across history. So this is just some information on bankruptcy filings. This is current through 2016. Bottom line, we were coming out of the recession, so there were fewer business startups, or excuse me, fewer business bankruptcies going into year 2016 compared to 2012, but nonetheless, that's real. We still have a lot of sole proprietors in our country, and that's the non-business column right next to business. And as you can see, we still experience a lot of those. My guess is that these numbers are going to be blown out of the water this year with what's going on with the COVID crisis. So you might be asking, okay, so what causes failure? This was a great study done by Statistic Brain and the University of Tennessee. Bottom line is 46% of business failures they attributed to incompetence. What they mean by that is emotional pricing or living too high for the business and so on. 30% was unbalanced experience or lack of managerial experience. So bottom line is about 76% of the causes of failure deal with incompetence, lack of knowledge basically, or just lack of experience in running a business. So here's some more leading management mistakes that were part of that study you might find interesting. So number one was people just going into business for the wrong reasons, right? You know, we've heard of people doing that, getting advice from family and friends rather than tried and true entrepreneurs. Number four there, the entrepreneur gets worn out and or underestimated the time requirements. And so burnout is a big thing with entrepreneurs for sure. Not to mention the family pressure on time and money. And so we'll move along here. Bottom line is strike three, you're out. If only the downside was as easy as walking back to the dugout. All right, well, it's not so easy. And I think in my years of entrepreneurship, education, and empowerment, there is a void in our entrepreneurial community and really understanding what the consequences of not doing this system better really are. And so that's what I really hope to share with you today. But I want to continue painting this picture of why we need to consider a better way or a different way. So obviously, if we don't do things the right way or we get into business for the wrong reasons, clearly we can go out of business. That can serve as a learning opportunity for the entrepreneur. Certainly a lot to learn from that, but it can also be emotional and traumatic at the same time. Debt that takes years to clear, loss of income, which impacts creditors and the standard of living for the entrepreneur and families, bankruptcy, social costs, and psychological costs. Not going to go into deep detail on these when we send you the slides. You're welcome to take a look at these a little bit closer, but just wanted you to see what the backside of this is for the entrepreneur when businesses go south. And of course, family stress is very common. So when it comes to verification, it's the perfect proof of a theory. Again, you're going to notice a trend here. We want to verify, and why that is so important is it proves or it provides critical feedback that we need in our entrepreneurial journey. So this maybe has been you in the past, or you know someone that's gone through this. This is an unhappy employee. And so obviously when businesses go south, they affect the entrepreneur, but also the employees. It's been said that it's one of the most stressful life events for employees because they rely on that stability. They lose their insurance, they lose income for a period of time. In fact, 1 in 10 unemployed people are unemployed 6 months or longer before they get hired again. There's a lot of stress for the employees as well, not to mention the entrepreneur. Families become insecure because they don't know of the employee's next move, and that job search takes individuals away from their family, both physically and emotionally. There's the concern or fear of starting their own business. So before you assume, try asking, right? We want to verify, but we want to ask, right? Who do we want to ask? We're going to talk about that. So cost of failed businesses, those affect the stakeholders as well. So who are stakeholders? You've got banks, you've got investors, suppliers, customers, community, and government, right? We're seeing that now with the COVID crisis going on. Banks are seeing loans not paid on time. investors aren't seeing the returns that they had expected or that they were used to pre-COVID, and the list goes on. So every entrepreneur, and I think this is why I'm passionate about working with you all, is you all have a dream, right? And it's our responsibility, I think, to help you to the best of our ability to go down a path, to test, to prove, to get feedback, to make sure that you're investing your time, energy, and money in the right way. So enough already of doing the same thing and knowing the results are overwhelmingly damaging. So progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything, according to Mr. Shaw. So what I'm going to share with you now is a little bit from the lean thought leaders in our country right now. So some of you may have heard of these people or read their books or seen them online. I encourage you to take some notes on this. Eric Ries wrote The Lean Startup. It's being used in universities and by entrepreneurs across the country. Steve Blank and Bob Dorff wrote the book, The Startup Owner's Manual. They have a free course, you'll see it down there at the bottom corner, How to Build a Startup, the Lean Launchpad. And that's a free course through Udacity. And I've got the URL that you can reference for that as well. You'll also find the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. You can search Kauffman Foundation online, and they're going to have just a treasure trove of information available to you on entrepreneurship best practices. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of their ways of doing things today and challenge your thinking a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about, let's compare the traditional planning process versus a enhanced entrepreneurial process. So first of all, the old way of doing things assumes a business can be built as opposed to should it be built. The old system lacked a compelling demand or need, and the idea only is what drove further action. Lack of business training of the founder. A lot of founders based their whole business on secondary research or research done by others, not the founder, i.e. the library. It was implied the research done by others is credible and resulted in a viable business model. We have to be really careful with that. But we could talk about that for a while, but just keep that in mind. Number 6 is initial assumptions aren't validated by the founder. Therefore, the model, the business model, is untested in the marketplace. So we want to go through a process whereby we validate our assumptions to make sure that we're delivering the customer what we intend to so that they buy our product. Number 7 is a faulty business model. So let's continue here. Poor execution, lack of funding. The old system had right bus, wrong person in the driver's seat. Failure to test the concept, waiting to determine if the concept is actually viable. Once the product is built, leases are signed, money raised, and they've quit their job. Number 12, I want you to think about that. I hope you're not in that position. I hope you haven't mortgaged the farm without testing your concept. For those of you that are just starting out, this is something you just want to remember, and that is it's hard to go back once the product's built and you've got a storefront and maybe even borrowed some money, right, and quit your job. So the great thing is we can do this concept, go through this concept of viability or proving that our business is worthwhile and people will actually buy what we have to sell before we do any of those things. Number 13, businesses rarely survive first contact with customers. Successful startups often launch with attributes resulting from pivots from the initial planning assumptions. Now, some of you may be in that position already, right? You've maybe done some initial testing with your target market, only to find that your initial idea really didn't hold water. People weren't really that crazy about it, but you found out through the process of speaking with them that if you did a pivot or made a change, that there was actually demand in the marketplace for that. And so I want to encourage you to be open to pivots, be open to changes, because a lot of entrepreneurs go through that, especially when they find out that some of their initial assumptions aren't as strong as what they thought. So number 14 is no one besides venture capitalists require 5-year plans to forecast complete unknowns. These plans are generally fiction, and dreaming them up is almost always a waste of time. So bottom line is I just did a recent study on this in terms of business plans for the university. And what I found out was that angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity funds, for the most part, they want to hear a pitch. And if they want backup information, then it's important to have backup information. But generally, they're limited on their time and their resources, and they're used to just hearing pitches. Really, I only found one source that needed a business plan, and that was if you're going requiring a loan through the SBA. They still require a business plan, but they're also interested in a pitch as well. And so it depends on your market, or it depends on your loan source as to what you will need. But the bottom line is when we put a business plan together, we want to make sure it's full of facts from the marketplace, not just complete fiction. So entrepreneurs now understand the problem, and namely that's that startups are not simply smaller versions of larger companies. Startups actually are in search mode, and they're seeking a repeatable and profitable business model. And that's what a lot of you probably are doing right now. You're in search of this business model, something that's repeatable and profitable that you can duplicate over and over again. So doing such requires dramatically different rules, skill sets, and tools in order to minimize the risk and optimize chances for success. All right, so let's talk about enhancements to the traditional planning process, okay? So we're moving now away from business plans to more flexible business models. We're moving away from untested assumptions to test, measure, and learn cycle. We're moving closer and closer to certainty. We're using validated learning instead of hunches and guesses. We're improving our probabilities of success by reducing the amount of risk and chance we take. We're moving in a direction now based on the facts that a business should be built as opposed to can it be. Any business can be built, but not every business should be. We're looking now towards known execution skills, testing your execution skills as opposed to not testing them before you launch. We can now see more sustainable startups as a result of validated learning. We're accelerating with product launches now with a shortened development process. Duplicatable startup validation models. So really what this is saying is we're trying to find something that could be duplicated over and over again, producing the same quality and results. We're preserving our limited commodities of time, energy, and resources, and we're searching for business models. We're doing more testing, more experimentation, and we're looking for proof. Customer feedback is key, and that's the key with the enhanced business planning process now. Is it's all based on customer feedback, not owner intuition, excuse me. The customer developed a customer developed iterative design. So basically what that means is entrepreneurs are now working with customers to have them build the product at the same time they're learning and getting feedback. So we're preserving cash while searching for a repeatable and scalable business model instead of the old way of doing things is spending all this money up front and then testing once it's almost too late. So bottom line is positive impact and societal benefits to all involved by an enhanced business planning process here. We get better results by getting out of the building and actually engaging customers, all right? So we're gonna skip over this a little bit. Let's talk about startup metrics here. So startup metrics, we've got a new set of metrics that we're using in this lean methodology. Number one, has the customer problem and product features been validated? In other words, are we moving away from intuition and hunches and guesses and actually validating in the business or in the marketplace that these problems actually exist and customers are experiencing the problem to the extent that they're willing to do something about it? Does the minimum product or service features resonate with customers? That's really important, right? We don't want to build something that people don't want. We want to build something that people do want. And so our customers are excited about what we're building. And then finally, who in fact is the customer? And have the initial customer related assumptions been validated through face-to-face customer interaction? So these startup metrics are drastically different than the way we used to do things. And these are metrics now that a lot of entrepreneurs across the country are using to ensure or to improve their chances of success in the marketplace. Despair ruins some, presumption many. So let's look at, you might be asking yourself, you know, Jeff, you've shared kind of the backside of entrepreneurship with us. So what is this enhanced process? What is this lean methodology that you're referring to? So this slide is what's called a business model canvas, all right? You can Google this and you can find these online really easily. We use these at Butler, and these are being used in corporations and universities throughout the country now. So what we do, this is a one-page document, and simply it translates a founder's vision for the company into assumptions, okay? So what we do is we sit down, the first thing that we do is we sit down and we go through each of these boxes, and we write down what our assumptions are about each of these blocks. Clearly, they're all assumptions because we're just getting started. The cool thing about this process is assumptions will change as we start getting feedback from customers. We want that. And as they change, we update our canvas. So the number one goal of customer discovery is turning the founder's initial assumptions about their market and customer into facts, right? So many of the businesses started through the traditional planning process had their assumptions, but they never turned those into facts before they started, and thus causing higher failure. We want to determine whether your startup's value proposition matches the customer segment it plans to target. In other words, value proposition is simply the value that you're delivering to the market, to your target market. Does that match the target market that you think demands that value proposition? So here's a more detailed view of the business model canvas. Again, you'll be getting these slides, so you can use these. I've highlighted three, what I consider to be the most important modules of the canvas. So number one is value proposition in the middle there. What is the problem or pain that you're actually solving? How do customers currently address that pain? And what are the features and the benefits of your product or service that solve that problem or pain? MVP is really, it's a fancy term for minimally viable product. That means what is your minimally viable product that you're going to use to get feedback on? It doesn't have to be completely built. It doesn't have to contain all the bells and whistles that it might at a later time. It can be, I often tell clients and students that it can be a drawing. You can get feedback off a drawing before you ever have to get into actually making the product. It can even be an idea. It doesn't even have to be a drawing. So customer segments there at the right. Who do you think your target market is? Let's be as specific as we possibly can and notate some characteristics there. How often will they purchase this product? Who influences buying decisions, right? So are you dealing directly with the buyer? Or let's say in the case of a children's product, for example, children influence their parents, and the parents are the ones that actually buy the product, not the children. All right, so that's just an example of why that is important to notate who influences the buying decision, because we want to make sure that our marketing is geared towards not only the end user, but also the influencers. Channels is really how the product gets from company to customer, how it gets to you, the method the product goes from supplier to your business, and then any cost associated with those channels. The most important one is how the product gets to the customer. Really identifying that. What are the different channels? It may be omni-channel. You probably have heard of that. Meaning there are different ways that the product gets to the customer. Maybe it's online. Maybe it's you have a bricks and mortar store as well. It could be through sales reps. It could be through a catalog. So there's a lot of different ways or possibilities, I should say, when it comes to channels. I'm not going to go over each of these blocks, but each of these bullet points really are there just to help you formulate your ideas so that when you have your blank business model canvas, you can fill it up by answering these bullet points on that business model canvas. So the first thing we do is we get our assumptions out on paper, all right? Now, before you assume, try asking. Launching a startup with untested assumptions has been the root of many failures. So what are we getting at here? Bottom line is we want to get out of the building and test the problem. Do people really care about this? I mean, do they care enough that they're going to give you their hard-earned money and become a customer? That's what we're really trying to identify before we launch this business and spend more of our time, energy, and money on something that before we know if people really care. So do we understand the problem? Do enough people really care that we can create a viable business? And are they excited about this such that they'll tell their friends? So this is customer discovery. All right, getting out of the building and talking with the our intended target market. So what does this look like? We've got our business model canvas filled out, full of assumptions. Now we want to go test those assumptions. We want to ask our target market each of these questions or verify each of these assumptions to find out really what the facts are. Again, we're preserving time, energy, and capital here until we find out what the facts are. We're moving from uncertainty to certainty. All right, so we're going to design customer tests. What that can be, there's different ways to test the market. You can do a survey. You can develop a website with the product and see how many orders you get, for example. You can do proof of concepts. Where you're actually launching a small version of the business in its rudimentary stage and seeing if people, what feedback you get from customers, would they actually buy the product? What you're trying to do is get a better understanding of the problem. What is the problem that customers have? And are they willing to do something about it? And so let's talk about what this looks like. So there are no facts inside the building, says Steve Blank. So get outside, all right? Prove assumptions, turn them into facts, or find out why they aren't, all right? So I'm gonna skip this, and we're gonna go to key steps to customer interaction. So you might be saying, okay, Jeff, that's great. You know, I understand the business model canvas, getting my assumptions out on paper. You want me to get out of the building and talk to customers, but what does that really look like? All right. So the first thing we're going to do is the easiest way to test is to do a survey. All right. So we're going to design our customer questions around the assumptions from the business model canvas. So take your business model canvas, look at the assumptions on there. So one deals with price. So would you pay $10 for this? I'm assuming that the problem that you have is you can't get enough information from the sources that you use. Is that correct? How often do you have this problem? When you have this problem, where do you go to find out more information and learn about solutions for this? Who do you use for solutions? Are you happy with their service? How much do you usually spend at a time? How many units do you purchase at a time? How often do you purchase? We could go on and on about the questions. That's something that the mentors can help you with, and where they can be a real valuable resource is designing the right questions here. You might say, might ask the question, how many? My suggestion is somewhere under 20, and you might have to do a brainstorm first and then trim these down. But again, the surveyees don't always have a lot of time or interest, and so we want to make it as painless for them as possible while getting a lot of feedback. All right. We want to develop some pass-fail metrics. What does that mean? It's pretty simple. In other words, you might say that in order for me to make money on this product, I've got to sell it for at least $10 because my cost is $5. So I have to, of the surveys that I do, at least 50% of them have to come back with a favorable answer to that question of, would you pay $10 for this? Because if let's say 70% say no, I would only pay 7 or 8, then there's not enough margin in there, so it's probably not a go. So your pass-fail metrics can be whatever you want them to be. It depends on the question and the type of information that you're asking. Your mentors can work with you on that, but you want to have some type of pass-fail percentages there to help you to determine if this is worth it or not. Preparing for the customer contact. So number one, you might ask, well, who are we contacting here? Who are we going to survey? You want to survey your target market. So if your target market is dentists, okay, then you don't want to ask grocery store managers these questions. You don't want to ask friends and family these questions. You want to ask dentists. So ideally, you want to come up with 50 to 100 potential contacts in order to be able to find out, clearly see what your trends and your averages are, okay? So what that looks like, to talk to 50 to 100 people, you might actually have to have on your list 500, right? So this takes time. This is not something that you want to do quickly, because it takes time setting up these meetings. I have students and clients that ask, can I do these? Can these be electronic surveys? Can I use SurveyMonkey or Constant Contact for this? And I always tell them it's best recommended that you do face-to-face interviews with your customers, because that's when you get the most information. When you're talking to someone face-to-face, it can even be by Zoom, right? Everything's done by Zoom now. They get to see you, they see how excited you are about the product and about the venture, and they're going to give you more information. You can also ask follow-up questions face-to-face that you can't really ask through electronic surveys. So, let's be realistic here. I usually tell my clients, after you've talked to 10 people, come back and let's talk, because we're going to start seeing what kind of reactions you're having to the questions, what some of the trends you're finding are, and we can really start trying to get a sense of what our market is telling us. Number 3 there is capture your answers in Excel. So you don't have to use Excel, but it's very user-friendly for capturing data. You want to be able to sort your answers and see where the trends and see what the popular trends are, and Excel is really good with that. When it comes to questions, I'm going to show you several slides here. I would encourage you to write down the URL that's down there at the bottom of the screen, or just make a mental note to capture that when we send you a copy of the slides. These are some possible questions that you can use to understand your market better. All right, we're not going to go through each of these, but it helps you to understand if you're talking to the right person, and are they really your target customer? All right, so there's some suggestions there. This website is really good with that. Here's some great questions about problem discovery. Does your target market have the problem or pain that we assumed, and how intense is it? The more intense it is, the higher probability they're willing to do something about it, okay? So we're getting a lot of great feedback here when we go through problem discovery. We're asking them what some of their unmet needs are. What product do you wish you had that doesn't even exist yet that could solve your problem? What could be done to improve your experience in your current role as a consumer? And the list goes on. These are some great questions about problem validation. So we need to validate that there's actually a problem. And so we want to use the below questions to begin validating or invalidating that your customer has the problem we think they have. So it's not, often it's not enough to just solve the problem. It also needs to be one that people are highly motivated to solve, all right? It's not enough to just solve a problem, but it has to be one that people are motivated to solve. So some of the below questions can help with that too. So do you find it hard to do X? How important is this product or service to you? Tell me about the last time you used this product, or what was your experience with that? How motivated are you to solve or improve the problem or the process? This is questions about product discovery. I'll just go over this briefly. This is questions to help generate ideas or validate your idea, all right, when it comes to the actual product. The MVP, so the question comes up sometimes about, let me go back there again. Oh, okay, there we go. MVP I mentioned earlier is minimally viable product. It's not important to have the product built before you start getting customer feedback. Remember, I mentioned it can be a sketch. It can even just be an idea. It's the customer feedback that's important, not the actual finished product. Once we have that sketch or we have that idea that we can describe to our potential target market, then we can start asking questions that validate the actual product, that check the optimization of the product, or give customers the opportunity to help us improve it. Then here's some suggestions about how to end those customer interviews. So you also want to ask for their contact information. The great thing about developing this list of customers that you got feedback from initially is often they can become the champions for your product once it's launched, right? So they're going to be great contacts to go back to actually sell the product once it's available. They're going to be ones that hopefully are evangelists for your product, and they're going to tell people about it because of what you shared with them early on. But the bottom line is capturing that information and thanking them for their time. So here's just a snapshot of the customer feedback in Excel. Again, just using that to sort through all of the feedback. You can have your mentors help you with this too. Yeah, and really what you're looking for, don't make this any harder than it actually is. What you're looking for here is, bottom line, what are the trends? What did people really say? What did the bulk of people say about this idea? About the product? Am I onto something here? Is this worth my time? Do I get a good sense, hopefully a strong sense, that people have the problem I thought they had, and that my product is a solution for that, and they're actually going to pay their hard-earned money for my product? So this just is kind of a fancy slide that says you can rate each of your questions based on how excited they were, how much of an urgent need it is, and would they purchase it? Would they actually purchase the product from me in 120 days or less? Was I talking to the right decision maker? In other words, is there enough customer excitement around the product to warrant further time, energy, and resources? All right, so at this point, we ask ourselves the question, do we pause, at this point, we pause and assess what the customers actually said. And this, I really want to encourage you to have the courage to ask yourself the question, do I need to move ahead at this point? Do I need to make a pivot based on the feedback I got? Or do I need to scrap the idea and move on to something else? We can take this initial feedback that we got and update our business model canvas with those facts. We can also begin updating the product or service with suggestions that we got. We can go back to our target market. We can show them the updated product and repeat the cycle again. The bottom line is this is simply using customer feedback to drive us to the next step. We're either moving forward because the feedback we got was really strong, or we're moving on to another idea, again, protecting our limited time, energy, and resources, moving that onward to something else because we didn't get great feedback from our target market. So this is really, bottom line, it's a market-driven process. It's not an idea-driven process. A lot of clients I've worked with in the past are driven by their idea as opposed to allowing the market to pull them along, all right? And so we start off with assumptions, we validate those assumptions, then we stop or continue. And what we're really trying to find out here is, have we proven that there's actually a compelling need in the marketplace for our product? We can build a business around that need, and that you as the founder are capable of executing that business model. So let's look at some answers here. You know, we talked about startup metrics before. So did we actually confirm that customers had the problem? Did we validate that? Do we understand the problem? Who in fact is our customer? Does the minimum product service features resonate with customers? And did enough people really care about the problem for this to become a viable business worthy of my time? And so we're going to talk now about the next step in the process. So this is called the proof of concept. All right. So the proof of concept really is continued feedback from the marketplace. So I like to look at this as from a step standpoint. So the first step is we outlined our business model canvas with initial assumptions that we had. We developed a questionnaire. We did face-to-face interviews with our target market. We did somewhere between 50 and 100 of those to validate our assumptions or invalidate them. We're now working with a lot more facts. And now we think there's a strong, compelling need in the marketplace. And now what we want to do is we want to go through a proof of concept. So what a proof of concept is really a soft launch. Okay, we're not going out leasing a space in a retail strip mall. We're not signing a lease. We're not borrowing a lot of money. We're not spending thousands of dollars on molds and product technology yet. What we're going to do is we're going to launch this or test this from a very small perspective, from a minimally viable standpoint, or just the bare bones product features, to see what kind of feedback we get, and what kind of feedback are we going to get from customers, and will they actually buy this? So a proof of concept can be done in your basement. It could be launching a website and offering the rudimentary product, right? Just and the brass tacks product without a lot of bells and whistles on it, and seeing if customers would buy that, or getting reactions from them. It could be a sketch, a nice sketch that's done on the website, and you're getting customers to respond to that. It could be at a craft show. It could be at some type of festival during the summer here or during the fall. It could be a soft launch, might be you give sales reps, a small group of sales reps, some initial samples, and see what kind of reaction they get from the marketplace. And so the list goes on. But pretty much no matter what type of product you have, you can get customer feedback and get some kind of proof of concept, not only by the surveys, but actually soft launching the business or the product or the service to continue to get more feedback. Once we get that feedback, then what we're also doing at the same time is we're proving that we can get in contact with the target market. We can make sales, or we can get valuable feedback. Number 5, we test the founder's ability to execute the business model. We don't spend enough time talking about that in entrepreneurship education. I wish we did, but that's one thing that the proof of concept does, is it proves your ability to actually execute the business. Did you like it? Did you like talking with customers? Did you like working with your supplier? Was there enough market demand to drive you to the next point? Well, what is the next point? And so basically we want to take all that feedback, we want to review, we want to analyze, we want to make adjustments. And then at that point, if we're still getting a lot of compelling demand, we're still getting, we're finding out that there's enough demand to convert prospects into paying customers. We've got people that are really excited about our product from our test launch or our proof of concept. Now we can start talking about what's more of a major launch. But you're doing it at this point based on facts, based on experience in the marketplace, not assumptions, right? We only get to this point, right? You could consider this to be the point at which you sign a lease, the point at which you develop molds to get your product made in volume. When you actually try to work on scaling the business by getting more sales reps or doing more trade shows. So we're continuing to get feedback, we're continuing to make adjustments, but we're scaling the business on a much broader scale now based on the feedback that we got before. So let's talk about this again, or summarize this again. This is a market-driven process where we start with assumptions, we validate them, we stop or continue. Assuming we continue, then we go through a proof of concept, and then we work on scaling the business. Okay, so it's at this point, I wanted to ask if you have any questions real quickly before I take questions. Wanted to just visit this page again. Many of these ideas, if not all, are coming from these lean thought leaders and Steve Blank, Bob Dorff, and Eric Ries. And this lean methodology that we're talking about here is becoming a best practice in universities and with serial entrepreneurs across the country. I had given you this information earlier, so won't give that to you again. You can, of course, get that from the slides that we have. So at this point, I want to open it up to questions that you have here.
Okay. I've been accumulating some questions here, some real good ones. The most recent one that came in just before you stopped, I'll read it word for word so you see what I see.
Okay.
From a management and operations standpoint, how can you gauge when you can effectively begin focusing on another venturing without sacrificing what you have?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I think, so corporations are using this, this feedback process as well, test, measure, learn, to launch new products, to experiment with new services. And so I think the short answer to that question, and it's a really good one, is making sure you have the right processes and procedures in place with your existing business model or your existing product or service, and that your staff is trained well and producing the kind of results you want. And then it's at that point when I think you can justify going out and testing a new product or service to add to your existing business.
Okay, Dara asks, concerning a life coaching business, how do you do all the steps, the proof of concept, customer segmentation? Can you use that as an example?
Yeah, Dara, good question there. So I've worked with life coaching clients in the past. At first, I want to say our job as mentors, which we're happy to do, we all volunteer our time, is to help you through this process. So don't feel pressure that you need to memorize this yourself. Really, it's an introduction so that you can come and see mentors either by phone or Zoom or in person that can walk you through this process and walk alongside you as you go through the various steps. But to answer your question directly. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to validate that people actually will pay to go see a life coach, right? So the bigger question, I think, is where do we go now when we need help? We go to career counselors, we go to psychologists, we go to counselors. Life coaching is still fairly a new concept. So we need to prove before we get much further, if when people have the problems that we think that they have, who will they turn to? Are they going to turn to their tried and true traditional sources of, let's say, the internet for more information, a counselor, a pastor, a family friend, or will they search out a life coach? Do they understand what the benefits of a life coach can bring them, the value that you can add to their life? And will they, are they willing to pay you for your valuable information? And so, again, a mentors can help walk you through this, but the overriding thing that I think you want to prove, Dara, is are people willing to turn to you when they have problems or are in the middle of a life challenge or life change, as opposed to turning to traditional sources? Sorry, Bill, I think you're muted.
I muted myself because I had to cough, and then I never unmuted myself.
I can kind of read lips, but maybe you should start over.
Yeah. So the question was, can we get a recording of this? And the other question was, can we get the slides? And the answer to both is yes, because we are using our registration list to send the slides and a link to our YouTube channel, which, by the way, as long as it got brought up, the SCORE YouTube channel for our chapter has all of the Zoom workshops that we've done since March. And there's about a half a dozen out there similar to this. And you can find it by going to YouTube and just using YouTube search engine and put Indianapolis SCORE. And you can watch, you could spend the rest of the afternoon watching webinars from our chapter, a lot of them on social media topics. But I have more questions.
Yes.
So early on, I had a question that I went back and forth on a little bit with the person asking, but it started off by saying, well, yeah, minimum viable product, that's a nice idea, but I want to have a restaurant. And I kind of like either have to have the restaurant or I don't have the restaurant. But once I have the restaurant, it's too late because I have the restaurant. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the food, going the food route, the restaurant route, can be validated rather easily before you go lease space and buy a bunch of restaurant equipment. So consider this. You take your top recipes that you're going to introduce or that you would like to introduce in your restaurant, and you go to maybe a farmer's market. Maybe you go to a food show and offer those and see what kind of feedback you get. Maybe what you do could consider is having a party and having maybe people that you know originally or initially, that is, to give you feedback, and then have them invite some family and friends to the next party, and you cook for them and get some feedback from people that aren't your family and friends. You're going to get some great feedback that way. It's a really low cost way to prove what you need to prove in terms of deciding whether you should go forward with that restaurant. What bigger picture, what we're trying to confirm there is, one, do people like the type of food that I cook? B, if they like the type of food that I cook, would they go someplace to purchase that? What does the competitive landscape look like for that? Are there other people in the area that are offering this type of food that already have establishments built, great reputation, where I'm going to have a lot of competition, or is that really not the case? But I would say a really low cost method for this is cooking for people in your home or their homes to get some feedback that will answer the question of do people like this food? What that's also going to do is serve as a proof of concept for you, and that's going to help you to determine if you like cooking for people, or if you like cooking, number one, and do you like cooking for people, and are you willing or able to take feedback that you get from them and implement that, because you're going to get that in the restaurant business. And so it helps to prove the execution side of this in addition to the food popularity side as well.
Okay, I'm sort of thinking about this as we're talking, and the restaurant business and the travel business have obviously been the most affected by the pandemic, and it's definitely kind of in turmoil right now. Some restaurants are closing their doors as we speak. But there will be a future out there and a rebuild in the economy. And who knows, it could be an opportunity to land a very nice location at a very reasonable rent if you've kind of got things figured out and you can be in the right place at the right time. Just similar to the housing bubble. It was kind of painful on the way down, but there's a lot of people who bought properties at the bottom and did just fine. So I think the restaurant idea is still viable, but the timing is tricky right now. So any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think, I heard statistics that somewhere between 20 and 40% of the restaurants that have closed will not reopen. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity once you've proved the concept. Probably unlike anything we've seen in probably close to 10 years or more in terms of opportunity in the marketplace. Like Bill said there, not only location, but there's going to be a lot of restaurant equipment for sale on the market, probably already is, that you can get as well. And so the key there is testing that concept first and making sure it's worth your time and money, and people like the food, and that you think that they would actually buy it before you launch that concept. Okay,
good. We're getting a real good steady flow of questions here. So thanks everybody, and feel free to continue to add to the list. When you were discussing the surveys and getting feedback from potential customers, Larry asked, just technically speaking, how do you avoid confirmation bias?
I think I think that's a good question, Larry. And I think the way you do that is you just ask open-ended questions instead of, closed-ended questions. So, for example, if I was asking the question about pricing, I would ask my target market. Let's say that I ideally need for customers to pay $10 or more for this product. I would ask the question, would you pay between 3 and 5, 5 and 7, 7 and 9, 10 and 12, et cetera. And I'd give them, allow them the opportunity to answer that without them feeling pressure from me about a certain price point, so as to appease me, as opposed to saying, would you pay $10 for this item? That they're going to be able to sense that I need to make $10 per unit for this to be profitable, and they may not want to hurt my feelings. Whereas when we open-ended questions with choices, they don't really know what our biases might be.
Do you just want to give a textbook definition of confirmation bias?
So, yeah, confirmation bias is the way I understand confirmation bias is that you have a bias towards what answers people are going to ask, or what their opinions are. And so, I might think, I'm pretty certain that people would buy this product. To me, that's a confirmation bias. And so, as opposed to going into that without a confirmation bias and asking the question, would you buy this? Yes or no?
Good. Good. So here's a 30,000 foot question. A question is, person has a business and has enough capital to expand into other businesses and understands that we have to solve people's problems. But the question is, how do you find problems that need to be solved?
Yeah, good question. So, there's a lot of, we're in the era where innovation is sexy, right? It's, we all like to talk about innovative things that we're doing, things that the market has never seen. I'm a believer. In fact, most of the businesses that I've started are businesses that already exist in the marketplace. And I just think that I could either do it better or I could just participate in a piece of the pie. And so, I pose that question to our students at Butler regularly, and that is, talk to your family and friends, or talk to your friends here on campus, and ask them what kind of problems they had on move-in day, for example, and maybe you might uncover something there, a need that's not met yet, that you could develop a product or service to add value to that experience. So the whole innovation world is about surveying the marketplace and looking for unmet needs, looking for problems that don't have solutions. Amazon is a great example. I mean, it's something that probably most of you are Prime members or are familiar with Prime. It's a great solution in a pandemic world that we've never been in before, when we need to get supplies, right? And so, and to Amazon's benefit, they invented this years ago, but we see now how innovative that truly was during times of a pandemic. So I would just encourage you to look in your own marketplace, your job that you're currently in, your community, and look for problems or challenges that exist. Find out if there's solutions to those, or if you need to if you could come up with a better widget, so to speak, to solve that problem.
Okay. Another person would like maybe your thoughts on a specific example of a business, and that would be a dump truck service business. How could you use this process to decide whether that would be something to invest in and move forward with?
Well, the key, I think, to a dump truck business, that's a very capital intensive business, right? To buy trucks is expensive. And so dump trucks are generally used to haul things, right? So I would identify the things the type of commodity or goods that you want to haul. Maybe it's dirt, gravel, maybe it's all that. Asphalt, whatever the case might be. And then I would go around to the manufacturers of that, to the plants, and I would ask them what the need is for more truck drivers, right? You go to the local cement factory or the local plant that makes or that excavates dirt and gravel, and you ask them, what are your needs now? Do you have enough dump trunks to meet all your needs, or are you in need of some? And if so, what is that need? How often is that need? How much are you paying for that need? And is there an opportunity in the marketplace for you at that point? And maybe what you do is you start off with a used dump truck just to test the waters. You make sure you're getting enough business from that, and that drives the second purchase, and so on.
Okay, good. I have a question from Shanice, but I think she hit the send button before she finished the question. So Shanice, if you want to send that again, I'll be looking for it. And there's a comment here. Tedria says that she's considering how to utilize these concepts in the fashion industry. Right now, she's creating custom T-shirts, masks, pillows, but is going to expand using these concepts. I don't think it's a question. I think it's just kind of like a aha
Okay.
moment.
All right.
So we'll let it go at that. There's a question here that drifts a little bit away from the core of what you're presenting, but it'd probably be something that would be worth mentioning. And it says, what do you suggest if everything is a go for sources of funding?
Yeah, it's a good question. Great question. That's, I think, a question a lot of entrepreneurs have is, how am I going to get funds for this? My first reaction to that is, nobody wants to invest in a business where they're not going to get a return on their investment. And so the way that you encourage or influence people to give you their money is to prove to them that they're going to get a return on their money. All right. And that you're a good risk. And I think the best way to prove that is to go through this customer feedback process to demonstrate to them that you've talked to customers, that you understand what the needs are of the customers, that you've done a proof of concept, that you were actually able to sell to X number of customers at these different venues. Here's how many back orders you have. Real raw experience from the marketplace. And that's also going to demonstrate to the lender that you're capable of executing, that you, not your business, but that you're a good risk as well, and you can execute this business. So you can go to the SBA. That's the first source that I would probably consider. Other groups are friends and family, credit cards, right? Although that's a high interest. Angels and VCs are there. It just depends on the size, the type of business, the risks involved, the founder and their background and experience. And you may have to go to any and all those sources to get funding.
Okay. Here's a question. Larry asks, you were mentioning stakeholders in the beginning. Were employees on that list? And if not, why not?
Yeah, employees could be on that list. I mentioned employees above that, as you may recall. But stakeholders are people that have, some skin in the game that, benefit or not from your business, or could suffer loss in the event that a business goes out of business. And so certainly employees are a stakeholder as well. I just talked about them above that, so didn't put them in the actual list.
Okay, here's a kind of a bottom line question. Okay, you do all of this and it looks pretty good. Is there a real way to know when you should physically quit your day job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Boy, I'm not sure I've got the perfect answer for that, other than I think revenue drives that. Cash flow from the business drives that. In other words, you're doing your proof of concept in your marketplace. You're getting really good feedback from customers. You have various sales events, and you're finding out that, hey, the customers really like this product and I'm selling it. Then you can start taking a look at, it's a math game at that point. Am I generating enough cash flow to pay the bills for my business and then have some left over for me? And is what's left over for me enough for me to live on? If I quit my job, I'm going to be able to scale this business, have time to scale this business even more. And if I can scale this business even more, then my profits, my revenue and profits should go up as well, which is going to help you to fill that income gap. So I know some people will have savings, right? They want to plan this event, and they will save money, maybe 3 to 6 months of money to cover expenses while their business is getting off the ground until it can generate enough revenue to offset that. So I would say the simple answer to that is let the business tell you, and that is look at your cash flow and determine if there's enough for you to start living on little by little. And then I think you're going to know at that point when the math tells you it's time to quit your day job.
Okay. We're getting some wide-ranging questions here, but we said we'd go to 1:30, and since it isn't,
Sure.
let's keep the conversation going here.
Yeah, great questions.
Victoria has a cleaning business. It's keeping her personally very busy, but she's essentially doing it by herself. And she's been thinking about, should I hire people to help me? How do you go through that thought process?
Yeah, Victoria, I think that's a good question. I think, you know, a lot of people start their business and they're working in their business. There's a cost though of working in your business like you're doing, and that is you don't have enough time, more than likely, the way it sounds, to go out and do additional marketing to pick up new customers. And so, what hiring someone would do, it would be to allow them to do the cleaning, the actual work in the business, and you to spend more time marketing the business, going out, advertising your business, giving quotes, and trying to expand your business. So maybe it's part-time, Victoria. Maybe you do 3 days of the work and you hire someone to do 2 days of the work, and that would free you up a day or two to go out and market your business and provide quotes to generate more revenue. So maybe you work into it gradually as opposed to going in all or nothing.
Well, Victoria got back to us and said, okay, good. What about the decision between contractors versus employees?
Yeah, I say there, Victoria, you know, most of us at SCORE, we're not CPAs and attorneys. I think we have some people in the group that are. I usually refer clients to talk to a business attorney or CPA about that. There's rules governing what substantiates an independent contractor from an employee, and you can Google that. But I would say it's best to talk with a business attorney about that to make sure you're doing it the right way. It can be expensive if you don't do it the right way.
Good. And Victoria says thank you.
Sure.
Here's a question I'll read word by word. I currently have loans. Some are SBA guaranteed, some aren't. By starting another business, will the lenders treat the new business as its own, or will I be required to personally guarantee the loans?
So that's a great question for I think the lenders. I think it depends on what kind of guarantee you have. Are you personally liable, personally and unconditionally liable for the payback of that loan, or is it limited? Is there limited liability? And so the other thing is, you know, do you have a limited liability company where that liability is limited to the assets of that limited liability company, or are you on the hook for not only the assets of the company, but are you liable personally as well? So I think it really just depends on the lender. So I would ask them, but I would look at your paperwork, your loan documents, and see what type of guarantee you have there and how far reaching that is.
Okay. This last question I'm going to use as a general encouragement to have people who are on this webinar think about getting some mentoring. The question is, what type of business structure should I have? LLC, S Corp, sole proprietor? And that is a very, very common question we get with mentoring clients. And the nice thing about that question is it really isn't the whole question, because we have to have the discussion about, so what is the business? Where are you in the process of starting the business? How are you thinking of structuring it? Are you going to have partners? Are you going to have investors? And I'm not going to put Jeff on the hot seat here to try to answer all of that, because that's what we do in SCORE mentoring. So Terry, I would encourage you to sign up for a mentoring session, and your question is very typical of what we see, and our mentors are all highly qualified to answer it.